Hello, and
Hi.
welcome to the new normal, a series of virtual discussions intended to help us get out of our comfort zones and debate different perspectives of the future. My name is Todd Terrazas, and I'm your host. On this episode, we have Irena Cronin giving a talk on spatial computing for work during and post-pandemic. Irena Cronin serves as a CEO of Infinite Retina, which provides research and business strategy to help companies succeed in spatial computing. She was previously CEO of Transformation Group, which advised decision makers on business strategies related to artificial intelligence, augmented and virtual reality, machine learning, facial recognition, robotics, autonomous vehicles, and related disruptive technologies. Previous to this, she worked several years as an equity research analyst with extensive experience evaluating both public and private companies. Now, following her talk, we will go into breakout rooms for 20 minutes. Afterwards, we'll return back to this main room for an open discussion. If you're watching this episode on Facebook, you can join our Zoom by visiting thenewnormalseries.com. Now, without further ado, here's Irena Cronin.
Hi. Thank you for having me on. So basically, I'm going to talk for about 10 minutes, which goes really fast. What I want to mention for these 10 minutes is there's been a lot of talk about virtualization that's been kickstarted by COVID-19. Everybody now that is working from home has probably used Zoom or some kind of virtualization app for connecting with their fellow coworkers or even family. So the idea is that this two-dimensional screen of Zoom can potentially be pushed forward into some kind of three-dimensional version. And the view, how you would be able to view that is possibly through a virtual reality headset. And maybe in the future, you can have AR glasses. You could have a conversation with people as they appear in front of you virtually in 3 dimensions. So what I want to say here is that kind of version of the future, I think this is going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen super quick. I do think that COVID has jump-started a lot of the kind of like imagination and behaviors of people to think that this is very possible and actually something that should be done. It's money saving for companies to not have people go into offices and have that office space. Also, people don't waste their time traveling to jobs, and so they're less tired. So I think all around virtualization, working from home, is really something that companies should definitely think as very viable and do it. They should do it as much as possible. So what does this mean for work? Well, obviously there's certain types of jobs and there's certain types of tasks that you could do much more efficiently and better if you had a three-dimensional view of what you're working on. Let's say you have a project with several people, include engineers or whatever. You could move that three-dimensional object around, whether it's an actual new product or whether it's a blueprint or whatever it is. So it's easier to talk through and also design. And certainly it does feel better if you do meet people in 3 dimensions because it makes it feel as if they are even closer to you than they actually are. Having said this, I have worked as a consultant and I have my own company, Infinite Retina. I've gotten all my clients by working on Zoom. So very, very, very few clients, even in the past, I've actually met in person. So you can have a business that runs just by doing 2-dimensional. But if you are working in a large corporation and you're building a product, even entrepreneurs who are building a new product, it would be really great if you are able to work in 3 dimensions for the reasons that I mentioned. So when do I think this is going to happen? All right, so there's a lot of work that needs to be done. The current virtualization types of, let's say, worlds that are out there for VR, I personally don't like most of them. I find them to be too artificial. I don't like the avatars. They're jarring. They're not very true to life, to what you look like. It doesn't feel natural, and it certainly doesn't feel right for business for me, maybe for consumer, but even then it's kind of a stretch. So when do I think, let's say for VR, something like this is possible, where it's more natural, where you could perhaps do a hybrid 2D, 3D versioning of things without too many technical issues, which exist now, probably in about 1.5 years. We need to have more software developed, more people actually working in the area, developing tools to make these things as seamless as possible, so that when you're actually in the program, it doesn't break down, it doesn't cut you out, so you have to go in and out. And you get this actually happening in Zoom a lot lately, because there's a lot of load where you could be cut out of the call and you have to get back on, or it's jittery, both the video and the sound. So that's 2D. Now imagine what happens with 3D. So there's a lot of work that needs to get done. However, there are companies working on it. So for VR, I'd say 1.5 years, maybe you could go and they're using your Quest, or the new Quest that is coming out, to be able to do VR virtualization for work and also for fun. Now for AR, it's probably a little further out. Apple's supposedly coming out with their dual version VR AR headset, perhaps in 2022, and a dedicated AR glasses in 2023. I think that a successful launch of these products will favor very well into the general population actually seeing virtualization and doing work via virtualization as a very viable thing. And then all kinds of other software apps and all kinds of things will be delivered once Apple comes in and proves that they actually have a winning product, and that they have their loyal people buying their headsets and their glasses. So I'm really looking forward to this happening. I would love for visualization to be as up to date as possible, to be as helpful for workers and people to be able to use this seamlessly without too much of an issue. And I'm really looking forward to this. I think I have about 1 minute. So I just want to caution everyone when they're talking about virtualization. There's been a ton of talk about it. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of work, and it needs more entrepreneurs working on it. So entrepreneurs out there, this is a huge area that we really need people working in. Okay, I think I'm at the 10-minute mark.
That's great. And so we're going to go into breakout rooms. And so Irena, if you like to pose a question for everyone to discuss, that'd be great.
Yeah, so the question I have is, there's lots of different features that you could get from having 3D visualization. So audio, whether you're interested in avatars, where you want to have a very photorealistic avatar. What is it exactly about virtualization that you find so compelling? Obviously, you wouldn't be on this call if you didn't find that to be the case. So I want to find out, what are those features that make you really want this to happen? Yeah, that's my question.
Nice chalkboard behind you.
Thank
That's awesome.
you.
Yeah, that's super cool.
It was a visual. We had a visual note taker from Passionate Arts Center do this at our Life Summit at Caltech last October.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow. That's super cool.
Awesome. Yeah, like they were talking and she was just like visualizing and capturing everything. Yeah.
Hopefully we'll do it again when we can have real life experiences,
We do have a whiteboard somehow in Zoom. It's in the share screen thing, but
yeah,
it's not as impressive as that.
Right.
Okay,
Well,
we're back.
Irena's back. Here we are. Wow, that was pretty impressive. We had we had 13 breakout rooms. And,
Wow, yeah.
Like at least 4 people per room, so that was good.
Cool.
That was awesome. Thanks, Todd.
No problem, guys. So yeah, anyone has any questions, Irena's here, and let's just start it off.
I joined in a bit late, so I'm curious to know what you guys, the context of spatial computing that you guys were looking at? Is it more general or specific to specific applications of AI?
Oh, it was definitely more general. So we were talking about how virtualization can actually help people work and also have fun, but mostly on the work side. And then talking about AR and VR. Yeah, so it wasn't vertical specific. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I had a question about any thoughts that you guys may have on the reluctance to share face masks and VR headsets in workplaces based on this new understanding of disease and sort of fear of the pandemic.
So I'll be really quick and then let other people chime in. It definitely is an issue. So if you think about location-based entertainment, like The Void and other ones, no one is rushing to do that right now, especially due to these concerns. You will have companies that will say, oh yeah, not an issue. We cleaned so thoroughly or whatever, but the airlines are saying the same thing, and restaurants are saying the same thing, and it is a difficult situation. How do other people feel about this?
Well, I mean, it doesn't matter how well you clean the headset if you're in the same room as someone in a tight environment. Like, it's not about headset cleanliness. Like VR demos, it's really common actually at VR demo stations to wipe down the headsets. I've seen this for years. Not everyone does it. And some people would actually wear these face masks to protect them. So even pre-COVID, there's a fair amount of awareness of sanitation with the headsets.
Yeah, you would have to, because it becomes very clear, because people sweat, or at least they were sweating.
Yeah,
you can easily see it. Yeah.
I think I would add something.
Unity ran their developer conference in Boston 3 or 4 years ago in December, and everybody was sick afterwards. But at the same time, the vendors haven't done a really good job about making it easy to clean these headsets. But if you talk to the medical community, they're doing it. It's a combination of choice of materials and headsets based upon what's the most cleanable, using light to kill it and other substances. But it's a hard problem.
Nicole?
I think. Oh.
Whoops, wrong Nicole.
Nicole Lozado.
Okay. All right. And then you. Yeah, so we're kind of making the difficult decision of like not having a shared lab, right, for the next year. The virus, I have a friend whom I haven't met in person for like 6 or 8 months, but he got it through his eyes. He got COVID through his eyes. Wow. And so the normal level of hygiene, concerns that we have with VR just kind of exponential, because an entry path is, your eye tissue. So we're kind of making that decision that it's just personal headsets and there's no sharing. And then we're probably going to be work from home until maybe January. I don't know if other studios are making that call. I would be curious to know that.
Elizabeth?
I think relating to the question, and more specifically regarding reluctance, I think technically, based on just other people that I've had conversations with, there's a lot of unknowns when it comes to just the frequencies that are also being used on these devices. And the other part is, like this is a new type of device that someone has to get to adopt into their workflow or just experience. So learning how to, be with a headset can be challenging. On the other side, in relation to just health, I'm wondering why I think it makes sense for individuals to own their own assets and have less sharing of the physical device itself. And I think the different tools that are being put up are more for just protecting the whole space and the people themselves, and not trying to Yeah, and not just trying to make the VR headset look like a bad thing, or adopting to using a different tool is a bad thing. I think that makes sense.
I just wanted to jump in for a second. So the idea of work becoming much more virtualized. So I mean, we're not talking about entertainment anymore, but just about work. So the idea is maybe the sharing of headsets could become a moot point because everybody's working on their own, working from home. And you could share these assets, you could share the viewpoints realistically in the future and the work product without actually having to go into the headset. So that's the future, where you can actually even work on something together that's a three-dimensionalized product without the need of sharing headsets. So that would be a great future, actually. What do people think about that? Do you think something is lost, let's say created, in a creative way by not being in the same room, let's say in a studio that is creating an app or software?
Irena, I have a question. Are you aware of products like Verbella that allow, it's not, you don't necessarily need to have a headset, it's also available in 2D, and then pretty much, I think all the major apps, they also have some kind of 2D versions, like Spatial, it also allows you to enter. So like, I think it's not absolutely necessary for collaboration. It's not absolutely necessary to have a VR headset for now.
Oh, it depends on what you're trying to do. Definitely. I think the future of visualization and virtualization for work allows you to have all kinds of different formats that you can share with people. And when you do need to go into 3D, that it's done really seamlessly without a problem. So yeah, I just think that right now, the tools for doing that in 3D are not yet really developed to the extent where everyone would feel comfortable to build that way in a work sense. Yeah.
I'd like to make a comment that or an observation that I've worked distance for years, and I found that some people are easier to distance work with than others. For me personally, and for someone else, they may be a better match for another person to work with at distance, if that makes sense. That the nonverbal communication that happens when you're in the same room as somebody is a big deal, and often what's unsaid is the key to understanding what the person is trying to communicate. And in order to get that subtext, you can either already kind of be receptive to the way that person non-verbally communicates, or you can learn that by being in the same room as them. So it opens up a whole area of misunderstanding and delays when you have a group of people collaborating at a distance who've never collaborated before in person. And it remains to be seen how much of that can be bridged by having everybody share the same virtual space, because it's, how good is the fidelity? I don't know if you guys have ever seen a show called Westworld, but that's one of the things that they explore is the how accurate does a reproduction of a person and their behavior have to be before they pass your personal Turing test?
I think that it's a long ways before you can have fully realized three-dimensional people in front of you. Let's say you're using an AR glasses or even contact lenses or even neural in the future, right? It's a long ways before you can, that'll pass the test that you feel like that 3D image in front of you is just like a person physically in front of you. But I mean, the thing is, how much do you really need to just get regular everyday work done? That to be the case. I love the idea that we can get to that point, but just for everyday work and tasks, maybe we don't have to go all that way. I think there's a lot of transition points where we can be very successful and productive without waiting until we get to that point. What does everybody think about that?
I have a comment about that.
Yeah.
I'm not really doing it for work, sort of, because I run quite a few weddings and funerals for VR. And I can guarantee you, your mind can fill in a lot of details. So I'll give you a real quick example. So we run, let's say, a wedding where we would have spatial audios. We use the high fidelity thing, and people coming to the event at first, they don't really get used to it. But once they realize that person that they know is speaking, as long as you have the audio going, your mind fills in the rest. And after the event, I would ask them, well, did you mind not having a video of them talking? And they say, no, was there video? I thought there was. So how they remember somebody, especially if they know them already, makes a huge difference. So I think you need higher fidelity when you meet somebody, because that's how your brain works. But once you know somebody, you're interacting. My point is that you can actually drop down the audio and it wouldn't really make that much difference. Of course, you have to talk about 3D assets and walking around 3D. That's a different problem. But talking and interacting and collaborating, having a high fidelity audio is really all, the brain will fill in the rest. That's my point.
Yes, I agree. Once you have that first personal meeting, then everything else usually will fall in place with remote collaboration.
I'll share something about that. We've been doing our meetings in Spatial for the past 3 months. And I saw one of my collaborators recently, physically, and my brain had remembered his avatar and the behavior of his avatar so much that I had trouble recognizing him. Like his behavior, the way he was different. He looked different to me in real. I was so used to his avatar.
You were used to it. So the personality came through digitally, easier for you. Yeah, that's interesting.
I found that just in Facebook avatars, because if someone's used only their Facebook avatar or, or LinkedIn or whatever, just that same photo for decades or for, 5 or 6 years, and then I see them in real life and it's like, oh, wait, it's rounded. I don't even just a flat photo is different than the real thing. But yeah, so I totally agree with what you're saying about the beaver. It would be, yeah, you get used to it. It just, you identify with it.
Interesting. Yeah,
I
so
have
you have
to
different
add
versions.
here.
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of research on group flow states and the heart coherence and the biofield around people's bodies, specifically related to a VR project that I'm working on. And in the military, they train people to go into group heart coherence, which is a process by which your heart connects to your brain. And people can enter into flow states together, but it has a lot to do with their literal proximity to each other, although they have found that it's non-local. It also, I think that people in the technology sector are quick to say that everything comes from the brain, but the entire body is responsible for much of the communication on the energetic level that I don't think is very easy to capture in a virtual reality, because people are so focused on three-dimensional replication and not the larger like energetic replication and things like that. So I think that the more we understand what the human body actually is and how it actually communicates with the world around it, there's going to be a much more of a responsibility for people to replicate beyond just looking at the three-dimensional body as like the standard for, group experiences and shared spaces.
Talking about people getting into group flow, this may be too specific to music, but during the pandemic, the Berlin Philharmonic has continued to do live concerts, but they have the performers socially distanced. In other words, they're at least 6 feet apart from each other, but they're so good at interacting with each other that they sound amazing, even though they're much further apart from each other than they would normally be. So once you've kind of learned how to get into that group flow thing, apparently being more distant doesn't impede that. You can still get into that state, which I find to be a very optimistic, hopeful thing.
I think that touches on the point of having if going beyond, thinking beyond replicating, reality, the physical stuff, and we want to replicate, or we want to look at the work or the process, by which things are happening. And that is, it's a lot easier to identify, okay, well, that looks realistic and that's uncanny valley. A lot harder to say, well, we've gotten the process of like a virtual conference, and we feel like we have exchanged that value. And if that process creates value, we want to be sure that that value is higher than had we done it in real life, because otherwise we don't need to buy the expensive hardware or the extra thing to do it. So we've got to focus on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of choices. We don't even know what the choices are yet. So that's a really good point, Nicole. These are new areas that we're entering now. People are still not even used to 2D kinds of, work conversation. They don't feel comfortable doing that. So imagine the 3D, what those aspects are. And then we have to figure out, when we're building the new apps and the software associated with that for this 3D collaboration, what are the necessary points that we have to include, and what should we be building on for the future? I don't have those answers yet. I have just a basic idea, I think, like everybody else. It's a lot of work that needs to get done for good entrepreneurs to come in.
Well, I think Shelley Peterson has kind of my poster child. She's my poster child for this, because in building the Orion spacecraft at Lockheed Martin, they have 80 to 90% improvements on a lot of key metrics in terms of the speed of assembly and the reduction in errors and all of that. And it has to do a lot with the way re-representing the work, re-representing spatial work really spatially. So if the work that you have is 2D, it's not going to benefit. But if it's there's a lot of Velcro on spacecraft, evidently. So being able to put the Velcro in the right spots, it's a lot of benefit to be able to put on an AR, sort of AR glasses, and then actually see what that's like. We're doing a piece for Oakland Heritage Society where we're walking on site and looking at historic buildings and then new development that's going in. And so if you can look around and see, that's concept A from standing in front of Mackey Hall or whatever on the CCA campus, and then now it's option B, and see it. That's spatial, there's a benefit there. There's more value than you could possibly get on any flat screen, or even a 3D foam core model. So those kinds of extra value is what we're looking for when we talk about adding spatial to work. What get you.
Jeremiah? Oh, you were just coughing.
I just spent 3 weeks exploring all what VR have to offer. For Entrepreneur Magazine, wrote an article about it. I didn't know much about it before, and what I saw and what everybody told me, that what's really important is human-to-human connection, real connection, and it really does not matter what form it is, what the avatar looks like. And I experienced it myself, because first I went on a meeting on a conference in Verbella, where avatars are very basic, and I got to network, I got to collaborate, and I felt absolutely present. It has huge room to improvement, and they're working on it, but it didn't really that matter that we looked like I don't know, some outdated video game. Really, it was another human somewhere in France, for example. It was Laval conference, who communicated with me and who gave me the information I needed, and it was a very prolific conversation. And also the thing is, when we're talking about VR and the possibilities, as I understand, Irena, you helping people to include VR products in their work life. So I shared with many friends of mine, because I was so fascinated with it. So I shared with many friends of mine, and there were 2 different approaches that I took. I could say hey, this is such a cool thing, come on and see. And they were expecting some cool thing, and they looked at all these poor graphics and they didn't understand why they and they were some of them were but even the people who might want it, because especially wanted to introduce it to my friends who work in education, because Verbella has a very, very good example of how it can work. Stanford lead program uses it. It's an online educational program, and they have absolutely magnificent results. Their completion rate is 95%, which is unheard of in online education. It's really, really good, and they're very happy with the system. So I wanted to share it with my friends who are in education. They were like, come on, this looks like fourth night, it's just so poor graphics and whatever, and I can do this. And they were like, absolutely, they're not interested. But when I'm taking another approach, when I'm explaining them what can they do and what the system has already done for others. So for example, like the thing is, like, you're not showing them the product, you're showing them, like, first marketing principle, you're showing them the benefits of using the product. You know, so and if I told, like, hey, there's this thing that Stanford uses and US San Diego uses, and they're very happy with it, and this allows it, this thing allows them to do this, this, and this, and reach this, and this goals. And they were so much more interested and invested and eager to learn and eager to understand how it works. And they give this system so much more credit from the start, and they're much less skeptical. So, like in general, when we are trying to introduce something completely new, it's great not to see, oh, look, you can just, you know, enlarge the objects with your hands, or not this. You just show them how they can benefit of using this.
Yeah, for the last number of years, there is no doubt there's been some good VR and a lot of really bad VR. There's just no doubt about it. But when it comes to applied kinds of uses for work and for industry, with people who actually have had very little contact with spatial computing, the best way I've found in getting them to understand it is not to show them a demo of it, but rather to explain the feature set, as you just talked about, what they can actually do with it, what do you want to get out of it, and you build it then. And that is the best way to actually talk to clients about what spatial computing can do, rather than showing them this demo and that demo. It just doesn't, it's not good. So yeah, I totally agree with you. It's going to get so much better as we go along. And then many more people will be able to understand it rather than just the group that we have right now. Yeah. So,
Irene, can I?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I represent California for National Association of Social Work for
Yes.
social workers. So I'm always in constant contact with therapists and clients that are recipient of violence. So I'm interested in this work as relates to anything virtual, because I know there's some benefits to it, especially when, right? So, but I'm not familiar with this spatial computing, and I would
spatial?
Spatial,
okay.
yeah, sorry. Okay. So I'm asking everyone to tag me and let me know what you have to offer, because I'd like to know more about it and bring it up to the attention of social workers.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to be a little quick about it. I actually have a client call it one.
Okay.
So, okay. Basically, spatial computing is any kind of technology, whether it's hardware or software, that you would need to be able to move through. So it's either human being, a robot, or a virtual being would need to move through a three-dimensional world. So that obviously includes augmented reality and virtual reality, but also includes artificial intelligence, computer vision, sensor technology, and anything else that you would need to be able to navigate a three-dimensional world. And it also includes automated vehicles that has a lot of these different kinds of components. So that's the full version of what spatial computing is.
All right.
In terms of help for understanding and empathy, there have been really some wonderful studies done on this for several years already that do prove that when you put a person in a simulated environment with a VR headset especially, so you have immersion, that you can get empathy, you can understand, you can be in someone else's body. Actually, you could change race and get a feeling of it, of what it might be like. They have tested people in the virtualized environment. They put them in a violent situation. Of course, they get their okay for this. It's a scientific test, and they actually feel pain. So it's very visceral. There's a lot of learning that can be done and training, where VR is very, very useful. They've used VR at Cedars-Sinai and other hospitals for pain management, where people are in a terrific amount of pain and they've been using opiates, and that's been wearing them down, where you could actually eliminate most of the opiate use by using VR for pain management. So it's really awesome. Yeah.
And also, I recommend buying Irena's book, because it goes into a lot of detail on the possibilities for the space.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much. I'm not even talking about the book. Well, in my last minute, so I co-wrote a book called The Infinite Retina, and it does go through what spatial computing is and how useful it is for 7 different industries. I'm focusing on enterprise, but it does go into media and telecom and those areas. So I highly recommend it. Let me know, anyone here, if you have any questions. You can reach me on LinkedIn, and I have my information. My phone number is basically everywhere, and my email address. So feel free to contact me. It's been wonderful being here. I think you guys can still continue to talk without me if you want to do that, but I've got to jump off. Thank you so much.
I just want to thank everyone. Thank Irena for everything. We do have a book club, so hopefully your book will be part of the book club one of these months.
That would be great.
You can find out more information there. But yeah, I guess respectful of everyone's time. It's been amazing. Hopefully see you next week. We're still working out the schedule, but yeah, this new normal series happens every Thursday at noon. And thank you all for coming, and have a great rest of your day, and hopefully see you soon.
Thanks.
Thank you.
See you guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, Irena.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Great seeing all of you.
Bye, folks.
Bye.